of money and extend to education, arts and culture, charities and environmental activities, as well as national and international NGOs.
Not surprising, therefore, that a number of volunteers specifically trained in areas such as medicine and education or even emergency rescue on a need basis from time to time do respond to natural disasters and indeed other emergencies.
Yes, Kingsley, this fact corroborates the United Nations General Assembly Hunger Volunteering for 2030 agenda in 2018. This indicates that volunteerism is a powerful means through which people are engaged to work for a collective agenda towards sustainable development, environmentally friendly society, sustainable peaceful world, free of all, or a reduced poverty, and a situation where no one is left behind in development.
Well, in spite of the fact that volunteerism is a selfless social act performed for the benefit of other people in order to improve the overall well-being of society, it is obvious that volunteerism is strengthened by trust, solidarity, and reciprocity. And volunteers are also taught valuable skills, among other benefits.
Meanwhile, national development, which is both qualitative and quantitative in nature, includes political, social, cultural, economic development and other forms of development that are dynamic and revolutionary in a society.
Research shows that it is pertinent for developing countries to seek to maximize volunteerism as a critical tool for national development.
What strategy can be employed to enhance volunteerism, and how can government maximize volunteerism for national development? These are some of the issues that Good Morning Nigeria will x-ray today as we focus on this very important issue. Of course, through volunteerism, a lot is usually achieved, especially in emergency situations.
In addition to that, we'll also examine the fallout from the Jay's Bank annual general meeting. On that note, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kyrian Umaya. Thanks for joining us for the program today. And our complimentary segments, as always, will come your way. Newspaper review, business, and others. And of course, for now, let's join Musbao Dan Wahab as he brings us highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Musbao.
Very good morning, Kyrian and Kingsley. The news. Approval has been granted for the conduct of Nigeria's second peer review process of the African peer review mechanism. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the approval for the self-assessment exercise in the country aimed at ascertaining the progress made in governance and socio-economic development. The special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, announced this approval while briefing journalists after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council.
Granted the approval that peer review report can be conducted on Nigeria.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the military and other security agencies to do whatever it takes towards ensuring that all Nigerians whose liberty and freedom have been taken away by criminal elements to be restored. The President gave his directive after receiving a formal briefing from Governor Abubakar Atiku Bagudu on the security situation in Kebbi State.
Persons who are held hostage against their will by a terror element, and he condemned the action of all terror groups wherever they are, whether they are bandits, Boko Haram, or any group that is taking away the liberty and freedoms, and in fact lives and livelihoods of others. And he maintained the instruction he has always given to the security agencies to give their maximum best in dealing with those criminal elements.
And from the National Assembly, where the Senate has passed the 2021 supplementary budget of 895.8 billion naira for second reading, The financial proposal has 722.3 billion naira as contribution to the Development Fund for Critical and Capital Expenditure. The significance of the budget, which has 173.4 billion naira as a current non-debt expenditure, was unanimously acknowledged by senators across board, strengthening Nigeria's fight against insecurity and ensuring that about 70% of eligible Nigerians receive COVID-19 vaccine by 2022 was the major reason for the additional funds.
The topical issue of security challenge in our country, which all of us know and are concerned about.
And this supplementary budget is making provision to equip the security agencies, particularly the military,
so that at least a substantial amount of this supplementary provision go to this ammunition.
That adequate provision is being made to cater for the vaccination of Nigerians.
12 states in Nigeria have been identified as pilot state for the National Liquefied Petroleum Gas Expansion Plan sensitization, with emphasis in rural communities. The flag-off in Abuja, overcoming the challenge of affordability, was paramount for industry players.
I would really like to commend this administration led by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for steering the country's oil and gas industry towards further development of the gas sector.
We're working to see that more volumes of LPG comes into the market. We can domesticate that. LNG is just one aspect. MPDC is another one.
Now, employers in Nigeria, particularly those requiring the services of lawyers, have been told to pay greater attention to what core lawyers can do to strengthen the nation's justice system. This position came from experts and resource persons at the opening of the annual NYC Legal Aid Workshop, which was held in Abuja.
Of the core member. Without the core member, they will find it very difficult to operate. Also, because the core members are also learning, they're also being trained, and it's a two-way traffic.
It is therefore expected that this topic will stimulate profound discourse on the various regulations guiding the processing of data in Nigeria as it applies to the scheme.
The way saying that knowledge is power is as good as information is power, and that statement has become more glaring and profound in recent times.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is supporting Nigeria in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic with equipment worth $1 million. The handover of the medical equipment took place at the Saudi Arabian Embassy in Abuja. Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Health, Abdulaziz Mashi Abdullahi, expressed Nigeria's appreciation to the good people of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the kind gesture. The medical equipment includes ventilators, surgical sterile gowns, non-sterile surgical gowns, surgical masks, and nitride gloves. The Permanent Secretary reiterated Nigerian government's commitment to the fight against COVID-19 to the level of total eradication. He commended the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for its continuous contribution to the growth of Nigeria's health sector through the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center, especially in the areas of combating cataract, glaucoma, and other eye-related disorders. The ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's Faisal Ibrahim Al-Ghamdi disclosed the plans of the kingdom to organize 12 free medical outreaches towards combating blindness and health-related problems across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had also rendered humanitarian support to displaced persons in the northeast, where food basket worth $10 million was distributed to families in Borno, Yobe, and Zamfara State. The Joint Admission and Matriculation Board, JAMB, has debunked publication in a leading newspaper on Monday, 21 June 2021, one that says the use of national identification number as a prerequisite for its UTME and direct entry examinations has affected its revenue generation capacity. In a statement, the board's head of media and protocol, Benjamin Fabian, says rather the board is pleased with the wonderful contribution NIN has brought to the UTME and direct entry registration process by helping in eradicating all forms of examination malpractice, adding that JAMB is not a revenue generating agency nor purported to be one. The board, he said, greatly appreciates the partnership with NIMSI, which has led to the inadvertent benefit of revealing the actual number of candidates that are registered for the examinations annually, noting that board having a realistic number of candidates sitting for each examination is a major achievement which only the partnership with NIMSI has made possible. Therefore, the board affirms its resolve not to ever compromise on the integrity of its processes on account of generating fat operating surpluses. Away from that, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has affirmed 44 new cases of COVID-19 in 4 states in the country. Lagos State has the largest with 32 new cases, with Rivers having 8, FCT and Plateau recording 2 new cases apiece. Nigeria now has 167,375 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 163,917 patients were treated and discharged, while 2,118 deaths have been recorded so far. And that concludes the morning news highlights. Thanks a lot for watching it. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Kingsley and Kirian after this break.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
We are going to begin on the street of Lagos to find people that can sing. Let's give this show voice of the street.
He like he done they talk too much. Small talk he done they talk. Sister, say.
Oh boy, you don't do too much. Small talk you don't do too much.
Badass. Since it, if you get money, can't be you.
They find the pity. The Lodogo say we like to party.
Say. Hey.
To watch amazing performances, you guys should tune in to The Voice Nigeria, connected by Airtel.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Our hands can pick up harmful germs. Safeguard soap not only removes germs, but continues to fight germs even after wash.
With Safeguard, germ regrowth is reduced for 12 hours. So, use Safeguard to safeguard your family to promote healthy habits.
Like every mother, I'm worried about dangerous insects, especially mosquitoes, which spread diseases like malaria to my loved ones. This year, I'm not afraid. I'm using New Mortein Insta-Kill. New Mortein Insta-Kill's improved formulation knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster. Not even a single mosquito is spared because even one mosquito bite can cause malaria. Mortein Insta knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy, and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 080-37044286 or Idris on 080-34-633-644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youth, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
If you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up ahead is business news.
Addressing regional leaders at the opening ceremony of the annual meetings of the bank's Board of Governors, the African Development Bank Group President, Dr. Kinwumi Adesina, said with debt levels projected to build up by an additional 10 percentage points of GDP by 2021, African governments need to create credible financial systems to build a resilient economy post-COVID-19.
Greater attention should be given to domestic resource mobilization, tackling corruption, building strong institutions for public expenditure and financial accountability, and debt management.
The Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo, and other stakeholders say Africa must turn the COVID-19 crisis into opportunities. By increasing investment in health infrastructure, medical and pharmaceutical capabilities, improving microeconomic and public financial management, as well as scale-up collaboration with public-private partnerships for inclusive development in Africa.
Major asset managers and multilateral development banks to try to lower government's borrowing costs by essentially creating a repurchase or repo market for holders of their sovereign bonds, akin to those that exist in advanced economies.
We now need speedy commitments on comparable terms, especially by private creditors. And we want to always make sure that other official bilateral creditors are in.
In Nigeria, we'll be making a lot of effort to, on a quarterly basis, disclose all the debts that we are borrowing, and also to indicate what the debt service is. And currently, we're working to include other state-owned debts that are not in the public debt for the purpose of transparency. We think that is important.
The 2021 annual meetings of the African Development Bank, holding virtually, is the 56th meeting of the bank's Board of Governors and 47th annual meeting of the African Development Fund, focusing its conversation and deliberations for the year on building resilient economies post-COVID-19 in Africa, from debt resolution to growth, the road ahead for Africa. With Business News, Comfort Amadou.
Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
And our reviewer, Bayo Atebe, is here. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Hi, Bayo. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. And from above the nameplate, ex-FIRS officials, that's the Inland Revenue Service, rearranged over 4 billion naira for tours not performed. Ex-FIRS officials rearranged over 4 billion naira for tours not performed. That's page 26. Press Council bill terribly draconian, worse than Decree 4. That's according to former Governor Segun Oshoba. He's also, of course, a very well-known journalist. Lawyers attack bill, say amendment poorly conceived. You have details of that on pages 3 and 27. Petrol smuggling persists. 102 million litres consumed in May. That's according to the NNPC. Gumi alleges collusion as 200 killed in Zamfara, despite Buhari's no-fly zone. And there's a writer to that headline, says clerics' allegation attempt to undermine troops and denigrate the military. That's according to the Nigerian army. Details of that on page 2. The kicker for the headline for the lead story says endless borrowing. Experts worry. Okonjo, Iweala, and Ahmed differ on Nigeria's debts. 3 riders. We will borrow more to build infrastructure, federal government insists. Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio rose from 29% to 35%. That's according to WTO boss, that's Okonjo Iweala. Funds spent on debt servicing by government worrisome, say experts. And the photographs on the front page there of the Punch newspaper scenes from the alleged airstrike on a market by Ethiopian forces in their battle against Tigray separatists in Mekele. That took place yesterday, Wednesday. Bauchi governor issues deadline as group pressures him on 2023 presidency. Kano Free Trade Zone concession to generate $2 billion export by 2027. That's according to the Bureau for Public Enterprises. Abuja private varsity opts for virtual learning as abductions rise. Buhari hosts northern governors over rising insecurity. Baby born in prison. Special boy, says on his wife at christening of released NSAS protester's son. Adamant minister stops Firo DG's appointment over demoted officer. Kirian.
All right, the Nation newspaper is next. Above the nameplate, Lawan, no cash for National Assembly renovation. 9 billion naira not released. That's on page 6. New security strategies working, says Matawale. That's on page 5. Buhari not behind MBC Press Council Acts review. It's on page 6. Soludo wins Anambra Abga governorship ticket. It's on page 5. Now the lead story is insecurity. ACF, Afenifere, Ohaneze, others join forces. Arewa plans ethnic leaders dialogue on state of the nation. Now, Plateau State's APC ready for council poll. Benue Rivers partner on rice production. The story is also on page 8. Enough of comments emboldening bandits. Army warns Gumi. Cleric recommends hiring of bandits as guards. Now below the photo story, AMCON takes over senators' houses for 600 million naira loan default. All right, at the foot of the Nation newspaper, NDDC forensic audit ready next month. It's on page 5. And NYSC to probe 1,000 members. That story is fully captured on page 6 of the Nation. Let's bring in Bayo now.
Thank you, Kirian. Let's start with the latest news from Governor Bello Matawale of Zamfara. He says farmers can safely return to their farms this planting season as peace is slowly returning to their area. He briefed the media after meet some northern governors met with President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday. He says, Governor of Niger State and I briefed the president, and he has assured us that action will be taken on issues discussed. Bello Matawale said Zamfara has been calm for the past 4 months because we didn't have much crisis. We are having improvements for the new security architecture. He assured farmers that they could safely return to their farms as stability is returning and they will be able to farm this farming season. Meanwhile, the special advisor to President on media, Mr. Femi Adesina, says presidency has nothing to do with ongoing process to amend bills related to the media under the auspices of Ministry of Information. In a brief after the Federal Executive Council, he said the initiative is strictly not involving the presidency. The public hearing is to amend laws in the agencies of the Ministry of Information, and it was proposed by members of the National Assembly, led by Honorable Odebomi Olusegun Dokun. Mr. Adesina also indicated that Nigeria is now ready for the second peer review under the auspices of NEPAD. He says the last assessment was 10 years ago, and at that point in time, Nigeria was petroleum was contributing 70 to 90% to the GDP. But today, it's now about 45% to the GDP, while non-oil is contributing about 55%. On the issue, pronouncement by the ECOWAS court ruling that nobody could be tried for using the suspended block platform, he said the government will seek advice from the Attorney General of the Federation. There are two stories that I've read. One is from Sheikh Gumi, which says that Islamic cleric has alleged that there are rogue security elements that are in complicity with security. And he says, I know these bandits. If we do not know, the bandits are operating with bad elements in our security system. And he asked, how can these big weapons get across our borders and get into the forest without the cooperation of so many bad elements in our security system? Shegumi, however, says that bandits are committing atrocities, but there are atrocities also committed against them too. And he is therefore calling that banditry and herdsmen, which he uses interchangeably, he says when one crosses to the other side, one discovered that Nigeria is fighting what he described as a tribal war. He emphasized, I am for the truth and I am for Nigeria. He says he still calls for amnesty for bandits, saying that they are ready to surrender if government will provide a means of livelihood for them. However, the Nigerian Army High Command has described the assertion of complicity by security men with bandits as sad and unfortunate. The Army spokesperson, Brigadier General Onyema Nwachukwu, says that such claims are a calculated attempt to denigrate the Nigerian military and undermine the sacrifice of our troops. He called on opinion leaders to demonstrate a sense of patriotism and build peace rather than being agents of destabilization and aggravating security challenges. Nigeria Army, he says, will not excuse any possibilities of black sheep in this fold, but it will not condone any form of sabotage or aiding or assisting elements against the country.
But I think it's even more important, at this point to investigate some of the claims by Gumi in the first instance, to be able to understand what he's talking about. Under normal circumstances, you have black sheep. You have people who, who are sellouts, naturally. And then there's no way you can exempt some persons who are in the security arrangement that do collaborate with bandits, right? And of course, some arrests made in the past, even in other circumstances of criminal activities, you discover that perhaps some ex-soldiers or ex-policemen and even serving ones have been caught on one or two or more occasions, around the country, apart from banditry that we're talking about now. But the kind of ammunition and the kind of weapons that these bandits brandish, shows that really that they have a regular source, of replenishment, that the supply chain is there. They don't lack ammunition. You see them in chains of bullets, showing that they're really very much armed.
I think both sides need to be cautious. First, the military has to be cautious so as not to demoralize our troops who are fighting insecurity. Secondly, they also have to use some of this information as intelligence to find out if actually indeed there are black sheep as has been identified, so that they could also help clean the house so that security does not give way to internal conspiracy. So both sides, but we need to be very careful. Allegations without proof can be very dangerous. Exactly. However, don't also forget that Sheikh Ahmed Gumi had a little background in the military before he left. So he is capitalizing on both aspects of it by trying to be a peacemaker and calling for amnesty. But we have a challenge, and all of us must have our hands on deck.
Well,
talking about...
I was just wondering, Sheikh Gumi, from time to time, makes statements, then also, of course, appears on some television or radio programs. And sometimes the impression is created that he's an advocate of bandits. If he has useful information for the intelligence and security services, why not pass the information to them? Why publicize the information if it is going to be useful in dealing with the very tense security situation in the country? Who are bandits? Are you going to say that armed robbers, no longer face the law in this country, if they are to face the law? Children are being kidnapped. Some of them have died in the hands of the kidnappers and bandits.
Access to these kidnappers.
So I don't know. I think that the thing is, once if you have useful intelligence, pass it to the appropriate authorities. The last point I would like to draw attention to, the one about petrol smuggling. They say it persists. 102 million liters consumed in May. That's according to the NNPC. And now they are getting the security agencies as well as the EFCC to get into this matter. This is one story that we have heard over the past 30 years.
Yes.
For 3 decades, and it was at some point a critical factor in increasing the pump price of petrol. Because they say that it's because the petrol is cheaper in Nigeria, that is why smugglers are able to take it across the borders of Nigeria. Yeah. But what are the numbers? That's one question. What are the numbers? If you can identify the routes, Nigeria has embassies in all the neighboring countries. So how many vehicles use petrol in those countries? How many vehicles do you have, assuming Niger is a destination? They have a refinery. How many vehicles are in Niger? How many vehicles are in Chad? How many vehicles are in Cameroon? How many vehicles are in Central African Republic? Are they up to the number of vehicles you have in Lagos, which has Lagos-Ogun axis, which both of them have half of the vehicles in Nigeria?
Just as rightly pointed out, the business has been on, that illicit business has been on for a very long time, right? It's a cross-border kind of business. Some make even the sales at the border points. They make the sales at the border points. And of course, they still use the trucks that we have around, to facilitate the transportation of fuel across the border. It's been there over the years.
What I'm saying, I agree with you. It's been there over the years, and there's been complicity. There's no question about that. But what is the quantum of fuel, of petrol, I'll be specific now, of petrol that is being smuggled? Count the number of vehicles, take a census of the number of vehicles in all these neighboring countries. They have no refinery, they have no other source of getting petrol apart from smuggled petrol from Nigeria.
Well, that's a big challenge for those of them who are concerned. For now, this is the human interest story. 2 persons have been arrested by police at Guanaram in Kwara State, where 10 members of one family died after consuming the herbal mixture. A woman who got the herbal mixture had a foot infection. She got the mixture from 2 persons and said they should give members of the family so that the infection does not affect all the others. And unfortunately, 10 of them died one after the other. The police have arrested 2 persons. It happened in Baruten in Kwara State, and the police is advising that people should be very careful of what they take. And this brings to...
It's not strictly a police matter. That's a public health issue straight away. The health officials also get into that. So the police themselves don't get infected, assuming it's an infectious disease.
People have been engaging in self-medication, using all manner of leaves and concoctions, and that people are taking it. When somebody says, look, if you bring a mango leaf, bring that, we mix it together, it will cure this and all of that. And you see people, you know, adhering to that, and that's part of the problem. Right. Even the educated ones are also involved. People know all manner of leaves that they concoct and use and say it's going to cure them.
The one I find very worrying are women who carry mixtures in kegs around. And we'll go to...
You know, we'll return to that. That's the one they sell at motor parks and elsewhere.
And even along the streets.
All right, Bayo Atoyebe, we appreciate your being around today.
Thank you
See
very
you
much.
again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, go ahead with our 2 topics for discussion this morning.
Euro 2020 is here. Enjoy all the matches live on Star Times for only 1,700 naira monthly or 160 naira per day. Recharge now to enjoy all the matches. Watch Cristiano Ronaldo of Portugal, Mbappe of France, Lukaku of Belgium, and other top European football stars. No matter where you are, Star Times is here for you. You can enjoy all these matches on your mobile phone. Just download Star Times on app on your phone to watch all the matches for 1,000 naira monthly or 400 naira weekly. Recharge today with 1,700 naira monthly or 160 naira daily. That's right, you heard me. On Star Times, you can watch all the matches with monthly subscription of 1,700 naira or daily subscription of 160 naira. Terms and conditions apply. Star Times, enjoy digital life.
Our hands can pick up harmful germs. Safeguard soap not only removes germs, but continues to fight germs even after wash.
With Safeguard, germ regrowth is reduced for 12 hours. So, use Safeguard to safeguard your family to promote healthy habits.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy, and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
You You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. For our first conversation this morning, which of course is on national development through volunteerism, let's listen into this background put together by our correspondent Joseph Olsen.
Volunteerism, to experts, is an expression of people's willingness and capacity to freely help others and improve their society. This humanitarian gesture is believed to have emerged from long-established ancient tradition of sharing, philanthropy, community service, and advocacy. Apart from seeking opportunities to help, services of volunteers come handy in times of needs and emerging challenges where there are shortfalls in personnel and other machineries. This may be in the education sector, environment, health, and security, among other stratas of development. The outstanding sacrifices being made by volunteer health workers globally in response to the COVID-19 pandemic is still fresh in the minds of many. In Nigeria, selfless efforts of volunteering groups in the northern part of the country to complement security agencies in the fight against insurgents and bandits is worthy of commendation. Volunteerism has the potential to significantly promote national ownership, patriotism, and development. The value of volunteerism in nation building has gained international recognition, with the United Nations designating 5th of December every year to mark International Volunteer Day. Celebrating the day last year, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, unveiled government plans to adopt a national policy on inclusive volunteerism. In a similar vein, Ministry of Water Resources this year launched a national youth volunteerism on sanitation as part of efforts to improve healthy living under COVID-19. The National Youth Service Corps itself is a national volunteering program where graduates contribute to the development of host communities. But thus, Nigeria still have the culture of volunteerism. How can it enhance patriotism, and what makes it very important at this critical point in time of the nation? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will soon air their views on these vital questions.
And to discuss national development through volunteerism with us today, we have the Permanent Secretary, Political and Economic Affairs, Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. David Adejo, in Abuja studio. It's a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you, Kirian, and good morning to you, as well as good morning to other Nigerians watching the program.
Exactly. And also with us in our Abuja studio here is the National Coordinator, Flag Foundation of Nigeria, Mr. Chris Aguirre. Chris, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
Now, also joining the conversation this morning is the head of the Education Committee, Workman Teachers Volunteers, Mr. Ada Adoko. Mr. Ada Adoko, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
And still with us in the Abuja studios, the public affairs analyst, Mr. Ahmed Sajo. Sajo, delight to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria after such a long while.
Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, you're welcome to the program. In opening banter, and of course, in the background report, we've tried to define what volunteerism really mean and the benefits therein. But let's begin this way. It's also believed that volunteerism provides natural sense of accomplishment, and of course it can boost self-confidence. But let's begin with you. Do we have the culture of volunteerism in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I think, like every African nation, Nigeria has a very strong culture of volunteerism. And the culture dates back even long before the colonial times. To come to recent times, the culture of volunteerism in Nigeria is exhibited in virtually every community in the country. where you have people coming together to farm for people. They do it in terms of, they do a schedule. They might say some people will farming on your farm today, tomorrow we'll go to our neighbor's farm. And if you recall, a number of schools that were built in these days before government started building schools, we have a lot of community schools. Those community schools were built by volunteer efforts. Those that do not have the resources will provide their own labor. And when you expand the culture of volunteerism, especially in parts of the country where you have age grades, specific age grades are designed to say, okay, you are responsible for this part. Like I know in the eastern parts, some age grades are responsible for security, some women age grades are responsible. So Nigeria has a very deep-rooted culture of volunteerism. The way it's playing out now is another thing. And to put in the last one, when some of us were growing up in the 70s and 80s, there was this culture where we go to summer schools. The summer schools were run by graduates from various universities, and they were giving lectures to students free of charge. They come with their chalks, they come with their notebooks. So, yes, Nigeria has a culture of volunteerism.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring in Ahmed Sajo, against the background of what our national experience had always been versus what we are seeing today. Are we in a position now to continue to tap into volunteerism for national development?
I think it's absolutely necessary, and I think this is the time. The key challenge is, have we codified it in such a manner that we would be able to guide people into volunteering? Like my brother said, you know, the Gaia, that is people going to farm on another person's farm, had always been there, and it had been a major intervention in food, provision of food in our communities. But beyond that, I come from the Northeast, and I will tell you that during the serious security challenges that we had in the Northeast, a lot of first responders, a lot of people who supported people who were running away from security-related activities were volunteers, people who could assist, who could. But because at that point in time, what volunteers could do and could not do was not codified, we lost a lot of volunteers. You know, when there is a bomb blast, for example, there's usually a secondary blast. The primary blast sometimes is just to bring people together. There's a secondary blast. But because people are not told that volunteering at certain point after the first primary blast was dangerous, we lost a lot of people who rushed to go and volunteer to assist. So we need to codify at what point, you know, do you need to come and assist? There are people who also lost who volunteered to assist others during flooding, not knowing that the real current of the water was on its way. And while you are helping other people evacuate either their properties or something, and then it goes with you. So volunteering for national development is important, it's imperative, it's necessary, but we need to be very careful to codify it. Even the COVID-19, you know, some of the first health workers that volunteered to work were at risk. Some of the first set of media practitioners who volunteered to go and bring out the information about what is happening had also become victims. So volunteerism, as good as it is, my own postulation is that we need to have a codified means of knowing what level of volunteerism could be of value to society and what level could put the volunteer himself at risk. And so we can avoid the risk factor, but harness the developmental factor.
Very quickly, very quickly, while you are on this issue of codification of aspects of volunteerism, I'm wondering, how then do you explain humanitarian law, which has grown in recent decades? Humanitarian law, for instance, it will tell you in a crisis situation, in a conflict situation, this is what you do. Associations such as the Red Cross, the rules of engagement by combatants versus volunteers. And in the Northeast that we just mentioned, We have seen instances where some NGOs have taken advantage of that, according to claims by Northeasterners, that they have, of course, created a sense of equality between, for instance, the terrorists and the Nigerian government, which is seeking a pushback against these persons. My question, therefore, is, there is the humanitarian law which is growing in recent times. So, what other codification are you having in mind?
No, let us be very honest with ourselves. You must accept that they said because of this disconnect, a lot of these laws you are talking about, they are in our statutes books, and we may know them as members of the ruling elite. But how much of them, how many, have we really externalized to reach the people so that the people understand that these things do exist? And I am telling you that, having been a community person, I have volunteered. I have volunteered to the point of even escorting the military to the war front. But I am telling you that at the level of the community, a lot of these laws and codifications are not known to the people. I started by telling you that we had difficulty explaining to people that after the primary blast, do not go because there's a secondary blast. A lot of people don't even know that there are certain limitations. And when you're talking about Red Cross and other NGOs saying that they are humanitarian, so even the insurgents are human beings and they deserve humanitarian intervention. I think that is hurtful. Somebody comes and kills my brother, my parent, and then you tell me that he's human. He has lost the sense of humanity. If he is brutal enough to kill without reason, he is not human. For me, he's inhuman. So treating him like a human being is like actually, supporting his brutality, and I don't support it at all. There's no volunteerism there.
All right, let's get to Mr. Chris Aguirre. Actually, the risk factor you mentioned is, for me, natural, in the sense that if you volunteer to assist those who are involved in an accident, for instance, and another accident occurs, of course, that is part of it. That is the naturality of volunteerism. Chris, let's get your own view on this. The Permanent Secretary, David Adejo, actually treats the history of volunteerism as an age-long practice in almost all the parts of this country. Today's Nigeria is totally different from what we had those days. Now, is volunteerism a factor of development?
Thank you very much. Indeed, it is a major factor of development. Volunteerism is embedded in man's DNA. For example, at least the African man. The African man, being your brother's keeper, dedicates and devotes his best to the well-being of his brother. Volunteerism is love in action. But please, gentlemen, permit me to, before I continue, I just want to seize this moment to commend Honorable Farouk Adamu. Through his personal effort, the typical example of volunteerism and demonstration of patriotism, hosted the tallest flagpole in Nigeria. The tallest flagpole in Jigawa State. I mean, that is a typical example of a Nigerian. For us in the Flag Foundation, I'm sorry I'm not digressing, for us in the Flag Foundation, our activities are based on volunteerism. But here is a gentleman, a Nigerian, with all the expenditure, volunteered to host the tallest flagpole in Nigeria and the second in Africa. That is a typical example of somebody who volunteered in a way. Because if you go to Jigawa, if you look at that flag, on sighting that flag, it reminds you that you are first and foremost a Nigerian. No matter how bitter you are with the Nigerian state and Nigerians, on sighting that huge flag, flying aloof up the sky, it inspires you, it renews your commitment to the Nigerian state. It psychs up the patriotism in you as a Nigerian. Apart from that, back to volunteerism.
Before you leave that, there's one thing about hosting flags in this country. Some flags have been hosted for a while, and when the flags begin to wear out, it's always left like that. It's also going to volunteer to maintain that flag.
Well, let's just, I'm on air. The Flag Foundation of Nigeria is inspired and taking interest in what he did. So on our own, we will volunteer.
To maintain it.
Not maintenance per se, but to the flag. For up there, that flag is not supposed to, we should be prepared to be changing it every 3 months. With the wind speed up there, 50 meters, such a huge flag, the weather, the wind, wear and tear will have effect on it. Every 3 months, Flag Foundation of Nigeria, we donate. Well, it's not donate. We'll make available.
You volunteer?
Yes, we volunteer. Thank you very much, sir. A huge flag that will always replace that. Kudos to Honorable Farouk Adamu and to Jigawa State Government.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Like I said, volunteerism is embedded in man. For those of us, most of the primary schools and secondary schools we attended were built not by government effort, out of community volunteerism. The churches we were attending as Christians were built out of volunteerism. When I was growing up as a teenager, my father was a counselor. And that being the case, he introduced the issue of road maintenance. Our women, our mothers, every 7 days would come and sweep the roads. That is volunteerism. The maintenance of the roads, the mission work, stuff, volunteerism. But that is then. We are living in the millennium age. And it's been recorded, it's believed that about 70% of Nigerian citizens, out of 200 million plus, 70% of them are below the age of 35. All of us are parents. These children grew up with little experience of what volunteerism means. At least from the early ages, from below 10 and upwards. In Nigeria today, the people, we are not conscious of what volunteerism means. As a Christian, if you go to church, you're expected to pay 10% tithe to God. And that is to compensate, for the life that God gave you. 10% of whatever is your income, you give it to God. That time you dedicate for the good of another man, the community, because every other thing is narrowed to, the well-being of man. It's expected, take it to be the 10% of what you are giving to the society. Under the social contract, some of your rights and privileges, you donate to government in turn. So it's a symbiotic relationship. Every party must contribute. That is volunteerism in the true sense of it. And let me just tell you, societies that have developed, for example, the United States, is located at 2019, about 77.3 million Americans, in this case adults, not even youth, well, a combination of youth and adults, 77% of them in 2019, by act of volunteerism, either to volunteer your money, to do community service, and put in man hours in things of public good. If they quantified it in economic terms, and it came up to about $167 billion, the quality of time.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chris Agri, thank you very much. In Nigeria, sometimes we have major challenges in measurement. If you say, look, how much time does your flag foundation expend on certain things, you know, getting the metrics right might be a big issue. But the point that you have made is noted, and we'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in now Mr. Adab Adoko, who is of the Workman Teachers Volunteers. I just want us to back up a bit and then go into probably what happened. We used to have a lot of training grounds, as it were, for volunteerism. There was the Boy Scouts, Man of War, Girls Guide, and St. John's Ambulance Brigade. At some point, of course, those things just vanished, or literally, they got diminished in our national reckoning. What happened?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. In fact, I was going to make mention of what you just said. I remember in the 80s and the early 90s, we had volunteer organizations like the Boy Scout, the Boys Brigade, the Girls Guide. I was one of the leaders of a Boy Scout in my town then, and I remember that we were part of the security agencies that was mandated to supervise sanitation activities that took place every Saturday in the town. You know, during the military era, there were specific sanitation days that people within the communities were expected to come out and clean up their environment. We went to offer ourselves as volunteers to supervise these communities in cleaning up their environment. We don't see those things these days any longer, you know. And I believe that primarily it is because of the lack of the policy prioritization of successive governments. The idea behind volunteerism is to be able to complement the efforts of government, you know, in providing social security, in providing education, in providing health, and all of what government is involved in the business of governance with. But along the years, it faded out, and that is quite unfortunate. And that is why my organization, Workman International, has singled out the aspect of education to complement the efforts of government in providing quality education to Nigerian children through the Universal Basic Education Program. As you know, education is the backbone of every society. And the neglect of education it will definitely spell doom to any nation. It is like the blood that runs in the body of human beings. If there is no blood, that body will naturally collapse. If there is no education, no country would naturally survive. And if there is shortage of this blood in the body system, it will naturally affect the health of the body. And so you will realize that the health of the nation as it concerns the education of the people will suffer. And so that is why we believe that education should be accessible, education should be available, education should be affordable. Now, with the recent happenings of banditry, insurgency, and high rate of economic deprivation in the land, a lot of these young school children are dropping out of school in our rural areas. Government must have to take note of this. As we speak, there are a lot of children out of school in communities where banditry is high. You know, they have abandoned it. And so we have taken it upon ourselves. We have decided to take the risk to enter into these communities, encourage parents and guardians and community leaders to send back their children to school. Now, some of the proprietors of these schools have abandoned the schools. And what Workman International is doing is to be able to acquire these schools, which we are doing by the grace of God with very limited funds, and then encourage these children to come back to schools. We are also encouraging the teachers to come back to be able to teach. But you realize that there are no more teachers within these communities to be able to teach our children. They are afraid. They have run out of the communities. Many of them are in urban centers looking for white-collar jobs, So we have been able to build a pool of volunteer teachers across the country. We have over 2,000 of them running now. Many of them are still teaching. Many of them are out of job, who have volunteered to be able to take responsibility in teaching these children in the various communities they are located. And sometimes we will have to bring them from their states to other states to do this. And this is not a small effort at all, but we are trying our best to be able to do so. And that is why I want to use this opportunity to reach out to the public, to come to the aid of genuine non-governmental organizations whose activities are geared towards this angle. You would have noticed that we have quite a number of volunteer organizations in humanitarian and disaster management, in health. Kudos to the Secretary to the Federal Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, who through the COVID-19 experience have been able to follow up with a national policy framework for volunteerism. We would want to see a more coordinated effort consigning and involving individuals, group of individuals, corporate organizations. Let the government be able to coordinate the activities of these organizations and individuals to the point where we can now have a partnership, a positive and result-oriented partnership with the federal government of Nigeria. And so we would advocate, for a national conference as a follow-up to this action plan that have been released by the federal government on volunteering program, so that it will bring on the table organizations like ours that are, genuinely pursuing the idea of helping these indigent children in our rural areas and those who are actually disadvantaged. I believe that if this is done, we will have a more enduring and a more fulfilling program where societies like ours will be promoted to the point where social cohesion, integration, and re-engineering will be the thing that the government will have to take advantage of, especially now that we have a lot of insecurity issues on the hand of government.
All right, thank you, Ada Adoko, for raising this issue of national framework for volunteerism, which of course said that the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is pioneering. And of course, we have the permanent secretary of that office here with us, Mr. David Adejo. In line with the postulations of Ada Adoko, what strategy or strategies can be employed to enhance volunteerism, and how can government maximize volunteerism for national development?
Okay. Thank you very much, Kirian, and thanks, Adogo. And I will tie an issue raised by my brother here and Adogo together. The first issue he talked about codification, and there was discussion about humanitarian efforts and all. Government realized the need that volunteerism, the way we were practicing it before, because of development, development happened. That is why Boy Scouts, Girls Guide, most of those things are phased out. I'll give you a practical example. I'm a Boy Scout. I'm a member of the 5th Military Troop at Papa. When my boy was growing up, I wanted to put him in a Boy Scout. The whole of Abuja, the only Boy Scout school I saw, Boy Scouts troop I saw, was in a school in Area 1. So imagine the whole stretch of Abuja, you have only one Boy Scouts unit. So because of the way our population went and the way we were taking development, these things tended to fizzle out. So but what government is doing to codify and make sure that we have a more holistic mechanism of approaching and harnessing volunteerism is that we have developed the National Policy on Inclusive Volunteerism. That is the first step. What that policy seeks to do is to clearly identify the various stakeholders in all the sectors, both private and public, identify the roles for these stakeholders, and from that identification, we are going on to develop a database of volunteer organizations. With that, we'll be able to have a picture of who is doing what area of volunteerism do you need support from. In terms of calling a national conference that Adogo referred to, we are not starting with a national conference. We are starting with regional meetings to reawaken, because for some of us, it's not just public enlightenment of what was not there before. It's an enlightenment of let's reawaken our spirits. Why did we forget this? We don't need to forget this. So we are holding regional conferences, workshops across the 6 geopolitical zone. The first will be starting in Kano between July 1st and 2nd. That is the process of making sure that we start bringing people back. And most importantly, let's not forget, the federal government cannot do it effectively. The state governments have to come in. The local governments have to come in. So the regional meetings we are holding first is to integrate the state governments, local governments, to get this buy-in, to understand that we need to find a means to bring these things back. So the local governments, state governments at that forum, along with NGOs and CSOs that we have had occasion to relate with, will be part of those discussions. And with that, government has set the pace. With that policy, we'll be able to reach, because one of the things, and I think Adego alluded to it, that is causing a disconnect is that people have left the communities. And for a long time, the community remained the basis of where we get our values from, where we have our ethics from. As I speak to you today, there's no community in Nigeria where you belong to and you think you want to do something against the community and you get away free. But you can move away from your community, you get into the city, nobody knows you, in quotes, and such things allow. So with this concept of trying to bring everybody together, to take it from the grassroots level, increase public awareness, and provide clearly cut and defined responsibilities for everybody. The NAPIV, which is the National Policy in Inclusive Volunteerism, has also come out with an action plan, which we are going to implement along with the CSOs that I've been working with. We are going to expand the network, because right now, like you mentioned, and I think it's been mentioned, in the area of security, there are rules for the volunteers to play. But the way it's going, we don't want a situation where we get quasi-voluntary security agencies that starts using that as a means of deceiving the people. We have a recent one that the National Security Advisor had to call that they needed to shut down, because, I mean, they were putting a foot as if they are volunteering security, and they were using it to hoodwink Nigerians on the guise of a fake agency. So for security, we need to be that conscious, and that is why we need to involve the state government to reactivate their state focal offices for volunteerism. And I think with that all-stakeholder approach, we'll be able to get a better hold on volunteerism in the country, so that it will play its active role in national development.
Okay, thank you. Once again, Ahmed Sajo, well, there are a number of issues, of course, we can deal with. in the matter of seeking to rejuvenate volunteerism as a tool for national development. But some persons would argue this is more like, in a sense, a chicken and egg situation. Which one comes first? In the past, that we all glorified the volunteer organizations and the volunteer efforts of community members. Things worked. Now we have existential threats that we are dealing with on a daily basis, and persons are being asked to donate their time and talents when they themselves are under threat, or threat of either economic survival or threat of physical security, and so on and so forth. And I'm not just talking about, say, here and now. We have seen over the years a diminution of the role and influence of government. In the past, when people volunteered, they said you knew that government was working, but that what government was doing would not be sufficient. So do this for yourself, help build schools, and so on and so forth, help maintain roads, even though you had PWD. But incidentally, we have become almost so insular that everyone, as the saying goes, has become a local government unto itself. So the time you're asking me to donate, or the talent you're asking me to donate, or the experience that I should give of my community, those are the things I will use to try to cushion myself and create a safety net around myself. So which is why I'm asking this question about the chicken and egg situation. What do we need to do to break out of the old mode so that in seeking to ramp up volunteerism, we get it right?
I think it's very simple, and I'm being very honest with you. Up till this moment that we're sitting here and talking, ordinary people still volunteer. The sense of volunteerism amongst our ordinary folk is still very much there. And you need to go out, on a Sunday to the church or on a Friday to the mosque, and you see young people either in their reflective jackets or in volunteer uniform, guiding people, making sure that there is peace and orderliness. You need to go to communities where government hardly reaches the people, and you see them clean up their environment and do certain things that improve their lives. Where we are lacking volunteerism, and I'm being very honest with it, is from us, members of the ruling elite, people who are supposedly comfortable. It is very difficult. You go to a highbrow area where there are fantastic houses, but you discover that all the gutters are blocked, because the sense of volunteerism has not reached the elite. The elite, what we have as elites, is a sense of entitlement. Everything must be done for us, and this is where we all missed it. This sense of entitlement. Government does everything for us, and we sit down. Now, what has government done? Government also pulled out at the local level. Every comfortable person, Mr. Permanent Secretary, yourself, and probably myself, is a municipal government on his own right.
Why probably yourself? I mean, you're also a big shot.
We are a municipal government of our own. We provide our own water through our private boreholes. We provide our own electricity through our generators. So, to some extent, we provide our own security at the gate. So government had taken off completely and left us to do certain things for ourselves. And so we don't share. You have a borehole. If you go to a place like Cameroon, you will not be allowed to have a borehole until you pledge to have one head of your pump outside for the community. Here in Nigeria, we don't care. You have water, you're comfortable, your neighbors go to the stream. And I think we need to change that perception. Volunteerism should start from taking care of our responsibilities to our communities. Excuse me. We got this where we are because members of our communities.
Sorry, we'll let you get a sip of water.
Sorry, sir.
Sorry,
sir. Let's just give you a break. Please get some water for him, please.
Chris Aguirre may wish to take up the issue from there, or some other point you may wish to ask.
Yes, I'd like him to come in from the point of view of professionalism in volunteerism. When people volunteer themselves to actually offer service for which they are not trained for, how will such a person function efficiently as a volunteer? For instance, Adra Aduk was talking about education. If he's not a professional in that field, he may not be able to offer any kind of volunteerism with respect to enhancing education, as he just told us. So what role does professionalism play in terms of volunteerism?
Thank you very much. I've taken time to analyze all the views from my brothers and sisters. Sorry, from my brothers here. The point is, you know, what we're trying to address is the core of the problem of our society. We're simply realizing that there is a disconnect between ourselves and our being. Our being in the sense of where we were brought up. The realities on ground simply tells us, reminds us that we are failing in our duties as human beings. It's a humanistic challenge. Either by cross purposes of orientations and information that now government is the alpha and omega. Don't forget, before coming into place of government, even life in the state of nature, according to Thomas Hobbes, was brutal, nasty, selfish, survival of the fittest. To attempt, O Israel. It took man, ourselves, to recall ourselves. So there's no need for us going this way and that and that. In the first instance, the government or the system of volunteerism was the beginning of human development, human rational thinking and ability, man's ability to cohere, to arrange ourselves for survival, purposes. Like the PAMSEC and my brother here stated, he's emphasizing so much on the civilian JTF, which is a typical example of volunteerism. Their life was under threat. They needed to do something to save themselves. They never needed, it was never a government initiative. It was a people initiative. Look, we can't just sit by and see these guys taking us off every day.
And those volunteers are not professional soldiers.
Sorry, when you talk about professionalism, that is where we get it wrong. For God's sake, from the villages where we grew up from, what professionalism are we talking about? Let's not deceive ourselves with big grammar and all the rest of them. We said, Scientia Faensido Christi, we learn to do by doing. Part of this topic is youth development, youth contribution, volunteerism, youth themselves. The part of our core is part of volunteerism. From primary school, there are certain things you go to do in the church or mosque. There's community service when you attain a certain age. It was not a government initiative. The point is that because of the challenges of urbanization, we forgot ourselves. Now, as the society faces an existential challenge, all we have to do is this. Let us tell ourselves the truth that we have to take the initiative from whatever angle you are. Even as staffs of NTA, you have to become security conscious because even your own very existence is under challenge.
Chris, actually, why I brought in professionalism in this conversation is the fact that recall what he told us a short while ago when he mentioned that if there's a bomb blast, for instance, you don't have to go out immediately for a volunteer because there may be a second blast. That's a matter of fact. Because if you don't have that training and understanding, you won't be able to know. For instance, if you have to offer volunteer yourself on health matters, you need to be a medical doctor, for instance.
Sure. That's a challenge of communication. Before now, there was no issues of bomb blasts, first and second, and people volunteering to save one another, just like a typical case of a road accident. What happened in Ibadan yesterday, when the tanker appeared to have gone off, even rescue workers were coming in, there was another explosion out of the tanker. Well, that is just part of it. The issue is this, that, please, let us become more conscious of who, as human beings, that in the case of bomb blasts, For those where the military people, of course, from what we saw that are involved, you now begin to talk to people. Who are those to communicate to them? You and I, to begin with. In my own place, in the marketplace, I engage people at all levels, from the family level to reawaken and to arouse the consciousness that this is what is on ground. It never needed a professional coding. First, the intelligence community, having studied how these things happen, they now pass information to the communities. Another challenge is that there's a disconnect between the man, the village head, the family head, and the government. Or else, once the experts discover that this is the trend, the information is trickled down. You pass it down to the people. Yes, of course, the issue of coming running to the rescue is the human instinct. Sometimes you know there's fire in this house, but you need to save somebody. You jump into it. Yes, that's all part of it. That is the humanity in us. That is why we're human beings. That is how we have the same blood flowing in us.
Yeah, well, Chris, thank you very much. To summarize part of what you just said, the issue is more of communication, sure, which is public enlightenment.
Thank you very much.
Because you may have a non-professional who finds himself in an emergency situation to help persons who are otherwise trapped. So what does the individual do?
Sure.
General public enlightenment. We find, I mean, you've talked about response to terror attacks, bomb blasts in particular, but what we find commonly, auto crashes. Automobile crashes.
Sure.
The passengers in the vehicle are trapped in the vehicle. People will come with all kinds of implements, axes and so on and so forth, to tear the car open or to tear the vehicle open and then get the persons who are trapped inside out. Now, how do you take those persons out? Experts will tell you that in some cases, the injuries that the passengers suffer are aggravated by the time they are being born out. Some of the spinal cord injuries have been traced to the ways those persons were handled and the way they were even placed on the ground and so on and so forth. So that has to do with public enlightenment.
That is where road safety comes in. Taking a typical state of fasting that happens every day. As far as I'm concerned, the Road Safety Commission have to wake up. Road safety. The consciousness of safety consciousness of every human being for that matter, forget whether it's road, that's domestic accidents, consciousness, security consciousness generally. So, I mean, the jingles are there, the communication, the point is this. Let's tell ourselves the truth.
I'm sorry. Again, I mean, let's make this clear, and I'm sure you remember. We all remember this. Growing up in those days, you are unlikely to find it today at an accident scene. If there is a presumed fracture, there is a plint that you can use. You don't carry the leg or the hand. You don't get a piece of wood or something to hold it. I'm not using my leg as an example because if my mom is watching this now, she might be saying, "What are you doing?" But you won't find that today. So that's the point about public enlightenment.
That is what we're
Persistent
about.
Public enlightenment.
Thank you very much.
When an accident happens, what do you do? When you are at an accident, if a person is bleeding, before the
help comes, before professional comes.
And these days, we don't even find the first aid boxes in vehicles.
You are back to this. It's a fundamental.
Yes.
That's a fundamental shift.
You used to have bandages. You used to have cotton wool.
In every car.
All kinds of things that iodine. Very painful.
That is the disconnect. That is the point we have to get back to. We have no alternative, no option than to get back to that.
Even in workplaces, offices, and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a first aid box in your office? And if you have a first aid box in your office, what do you have inside that first aid box?
For your own good. For your own good.
All right. So, you're still clear. We're going to have a short break. Our director is telling us before
not right now. Okay. Let's bring in Adoko here once more. You've listened to the other guests, make their comments, right, on this conversation. And a short while ago, you were telling us what your NGO has been doing with respect to education. In fact, that prompted my idea for bringing in a professionalism in what we're talking about, because, of course, if you have to volunteer in some critical areas, that you have to be a professional. For instance, if you are going to be a volunteer on any issue concerning health, you must have some health education. There must be a health worker, one way or another, so that you can offer a professional volunteerism. Now, does professionalism play any role in volunteerism?
Thank you, Kirian. Before I go further, I would want to state that the individual volunteer in Nigeria has been grossly underexploited. We have a large population of citizens, mainly youths, who really know what to do, for instance, in the emergency situations that we just that was just highlighted. I think a lot of sensitization has to go on by these professional bodies through seminars, through symposiums, through public awareness campaigns in the area of accident, emergency accident situations, fire, for instance, and all of that. Having said that, in fact, Kirian, professionalism in volunteerism is the core of volunteerism, because you are trying to help people in need, most of which are in crisis situation. And so you will need professionals to be able to train these volunteers who have presented themselves for such services. Professional bodies like the Medical Association of Nigeria, the law body MBA, and all of these professional bodies, this is where they need to come in to complement the government, the effort of government. In our case, in the Workman International Organization, like I said, we have professional teachers, many of them supervisors in education boards, who have opted to volunteer their time and labor to bring education to the doorsteps of the most needy in our rural areas. So where we have communities where there is the lack of teachers or dearth of teachers, these professionals come in to give first-hand training to these available citizens. Of course, they have to be educated themselves. But most of them have minimal education. Some of them stopped their educational pursuit at the secondary school level, some at the polytechnic level, even others at the university level. You know, they have gone to the urban centers and no jobs. They have decided to return back home to come and farm, you know, and engage in other rural activities that will help their situation. So these are the people we normally target and train to help us in these volunteering services that we bring to the rural communities in terms of education. And you know, the idea of volunteerism is usually that it does not come with any pecuniary benefit. But it does not exclude logistical demands, like transportation, for instance, like feeding of these volunteers and the rest of it. So we try as much as possible to make these resources available to encourage them to continue. you know, we talked about the problem of volunteerism in Nigeria, that the country is underutilizing the potentials of volunteerism. And this is primarily because there is corruption in the system. There is distrust on the part of the citizen concerning government policies geared towards improving the well-being of the people.
Okay, Mr. Adoko, thank you very much. We're getting pressed for time before we take a short break and get ahead with our second topic for conversation. One thing we have seen in the corporate world in recent decades is the rise of corporate social responsibility, which is also a variant of volunteerism. I'm wondering whether corporate entities are captured in the national policy on inclusive volunteerism. You find companies doing things that are out of their business line, things that are, on the face of it, not intended to maximize shareholder value, as is referred to in corporate governance. So what role is envisaged for them in the national policy on inclusive volunteerism?
Thank you very much. Like I explained earlier, the national policy on inclusive volunteerism captured virtually all the stakeholders. And we took advantage of the burgeoning role of the corporate world in their corporate social responsibility. So we classify all of them volunteer involving organizations. These are the organizations that will engage, and that is why we want to structure. Let's understand that volunteerism is first and foremost of free will. So government is only trying to harmonize what is happening. So it is for the corporate organizations, they have their areas of interest, and as government, we want to see how these areas of interest are equitably spread so that everybody is part of the inclusive plan. So we, in our proposed engagements on the website, on the database we are developing, each of these corporate agencies that we know, there is not all, each of them will be a member. They will register on that platform, and from that platform we'll be able to see which area we can move excess to, which area we can reduce. And like I said, we have started the conversation at the regional level. We are going to engage the corporate world on another separate plane, because the dynamics of discussing with the corporate world that are already involved in volunteerism is different from the dynamics of encouraging state governments and others to participate.
All right. At this point, gentlemen, we would like to appreciate you for being part of our program this morning. Mr. David Adejo, of course, Permanent Secretary, Political and Economic Affairs, Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Thank you. Mr. Chris Aguirre, we also would like to appreciate you, National Coordinator of Flag Foundation of Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right.
Much.
And Mr. Light Ada Adogo, we also would like to thank you for being there for us on this occasion. And Mr. Ahmed Sergio, thanks for taking time to be part of our program today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We're taking a short break now, and when we come back, we'll be discussing issues around Jaiz Bank of Nigeria. Do stay with us.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth Entrepreneurship Support Years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, The Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
All right, so welcome back. Every company is required to hold an annual general meeting within 18 months of incorporation, and then every year thereafter.
Well, the annual general meeting is the highest governance organ of every incorporated entity. And the meeting provides an opportunity for members to discuss the operations of the company and to take steps to protect their interests. They can, at the meeting, discuss any matter relating to the conduct of the affairs of the company. And these affairs, of course, will include the financial statements that are usually read and adopted, and if there are matters arising, those matters, of course, are also decided upon. Stakeholders are also at the meeting kept abreast of the activities and operations of the company. And the meeting also will vote on other issues, including the election of directors who will serve on the board of the entity.
All right, now to tell us more about Jaiz Bank's annual general meeting and its fallout, I have with me, or we have with us actually in the studio, the Managing Director, Jaiz Bank, Mr. Hassan Osman. So you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Right, so your AGM held yesterday, I believe? Yes.
Yes, it did.
What was the outcome? Was it a rancorous meeting or was it a peaceful one? Because sometimes AGMs can be heated.
We had a very decent AGM as usual. We never had any rancorous AGM. Ours, it's a family of shareholders, directors, and management that understand the aim and objectives, the vision and mission of the bank, and also what it stands for and what it is supposed to deliver in terms of value to Nigerians, irrespective of their faith and where they come from.
All right, Islamic financing is becoming more popular in Nigeria with many more entrants in the subsector. Now, how can the government leverage on this mode of financing to solve the problems of underdevelopment, especially
involve finance, marine, real economy. So you see that every activity or every finance that you have, financing intervention, are related directly to the economy, directly related to infrastructure development, creating jobs, empowering people, because you provide transactions that are either equity-based, that is, you are giving them capital to kickstart their business, or you are supporting them in acquiring physical assets that will help them to expand their business. So this mode of financing gives itself to all various economic agents, whether the government, their companies, private sector, individuals, and SMEs especially, an opportunity to use the system to raise funding that will address infrastructure gap, for example, for the economy. If you know that within the last 3 years, the funding to address specifically roads. Now, what is interesting about this type of funding, which if you contrast it with ordinary bonds, is the fact that in the case of a sukuk, this money must be directly used for the purpose for which it was raised. It cannot be used for any other purpose. And there are governing rules around the protection and preservation of those funds until they are used for the purpose. If you go around this country from east to west, north to south, you will see roads that are tagged sukuk road. Now, these roads compared to other roads that are not funded by sukuk, they are quicker in terms of completion, because first of all, the contractor knows that the money is warehoused. It's not just waiting for budgeting purpose to happen. The contractor knows that as soon as certificate is raised, they will get their money. So they are always ahead of the government in terms of meeting their commitments and then ensuring that they complete the roads. So now you find competition around states who are wishing that their federal roads are included in the scheme, in the school program. Similarly, you can fund any possible infrastructure, whether it is roads or railways or airports, which are things that we require, or power, which are things that we require to really energize this economy, provide the base for which industrialization can take place, and also to create more employment, which are some of the key issues in this country: infrastructure, unemployment, and of course security, because they are all tied together.
All right, thank you very much, Hassan Usman. Well, in terms of the outcome of your AGM, what did the numbers reveal?
Well, this is the best in terms of performance we have had. You know, as a growing institution, at the initial stage of its life, we are challenged with getting awareness, getting people to patronize. But we have been growing over the last 3 years at the average of 35%, which is really fantastic by any standard. Last year, that is 2020, our revenues grew by 40%. Our profit before tax grew by more than 40%, about 45%. The balance sheet itself, like I said, grew by about 35% as well. Our profit after tax went up by 19%. We paid the same dividend to ensure stability and also ensure that these reserves are created to further increase the capacity, the capital of the bank, so that it can spread across Nigeria. The AGM, like I said, was well attended, even though it's under COVID protocol. So we had many of our shareholders joining online, while a few of the shareholders were physically there. And we had a good turnout, a good result for 2020, and we believe that even 2021 will even be better, God willing.
So it was a successful AGM.
It was very successful.
All right, a little bit away from that, what is your assessment of the, current challenges facing the nation's economy, and how does that affect the banking sector?
Well, I think I pointed to some of the challenges. The main, if you can say, number one challenge today around economy, which is related to also socio-economic development of the nation, is unemployment. Our unemployment figures are well above 30%, and that is fueling insecurity. So it's a vicious cycle. We have infrastructure gap, which needs to be filled urgently. The government is on the right course, trying to address the major infrastructure gaps in power, in transport, education. This is an area that all of us, government and private sector, needs to do much more, because education is not just about volume, but also about quality and also specific type of skills that we want the Nigerian people to acquire so that they can be more productive. All of these issues, if addressed, can help to diversify the economy, because one of our main challenges is that we are a mono economy in terms of foreign exchange inflows. And foreign exchange for any growing economy is significant issue. Is something that when you have hiccups, especially you have just one single source of foreign exchange, then you are bound to have ups and downs. When the world sneezes, you cough. And this is what exactly happened during the pandemic, when people are locked down, people are not buying, they are not moving, so petroleum products are not in demand. The Nigerian crude is not being sold. There is almost no inflow of foreign exchange, except for some growing efforts now in the export business that started to bring some trickles, but that is not compared to what crude oil is bringing. So these systemic issues, they need to be addressed, and they cannot be addressed in isolation. You must address the infrastructure, you must address education, and more importantly, you have to find ways to make agriculture more productive and to encourage people to go into it, so that all of this can help, agriculture can help diversify the source of foreign exchange, because the world is growing, the advanced economies are going to be dropping some of this primary production, and there is demand for Nigerian products if they are standardized and if the quality is improved and also the volume of production is also increased. So all of these are things that I believe requires concerted efforts between the government and the private sector to ensure that we have this development. If we deal with this, we are going to have less and less unemployment, and therefore less and less security challenges. There are some sectors really that needs to be addressed significantly, because the challenges of insecurity has dispossessed many people out of their normal livelihood. So you have to provide other options for them, get them employed. Otherwise, you continue to have these difficulties with security.
Well, part of what we have seen over the years in Nigeria is that the interest rate regime by commercial banks has been a disincentive to the real sector. Is your bank making any difference in this regard, other than intervention, say, for instance, in infrastructural development through the Sukuk bond?
Yes, our type of banking is not interest-based. Yes, you will then ask what is the source of income. What we do is we partner with our customers to deliver project and share profit or loss, or we sell to them what they require with our profit that we add and give them time to pay, or we buy the things that they need. If they are physical items that can be leased, then we lease them out to them and they gradually own those assets. Now, although in a country where you have interest-based fundamentals, because all of what we do in banking, 99% is talking about interest, and that interest is compounded. It has issues, but interest is also related to the level of inflation. Now, it is not just the interest that will be the problem, it's how do you support your customers? If you are giving them overdrafts, overdrafts are not supervised financing. They are financing that you can do virtually anything you want to do under the sun, including obviously wasteful spending. We don't do that. We actually finance real transactions. You have to bring something that will add value to the economy. You are buying a fridge, we buy the fridge and sell to you. You need fertilizer, we buy the fertilizer, we sell to you. You need a house, we buy the house, we can co-own the house, and then we lease it to you, and then over time you own it. So this way we try to help customers not to go into trouble by taking funding that they don't need, and then eventually with the compound situation in the conventional system, you take a 1 million naira overdraft and you are now servicing after 5 years, it has doubled.
All right. Managing Director of Jai's Bank, would like to thank you for appearing on Good Morning Nigeria for us to understand more about the workings and the dealings of Jai's Bank. Mr. Hassan Usman, once again, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so that's it on Good Morning Nigeria today. The program returns tomorrow at its usual time, 7 o'clock. Until then, do take care of yourself. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kyrian Umar. Do have a great day.